After 10 weeks of the NFL season, where does your favorite NFL team rank? Welcome, football fans, ladies, gentlemen, and every last one of you jabronis. It's Mitch here to rank every NFL team from the worst, number 32, to the best, the number one team in football, entering week 11. I'm sitting here on 11-11 to rank every NFL team. Before I do, make sure that you do, spike the like button, show your love. It's free, and don't be a jabroni, bro. Subscribe to the channel for weekly power rankings, the most honest, the most brutal, the most truthful power rankings on the internet here on the Bottom Line View. Let's break it down, beginning with the worst team in football. And before you comment, I don't hate your team. I simply think they absolutely suck. So, let's kick it off with number 32, the Tennessee Titans. And if you're a Titans fan and you have a problem with me ranking your team last, please call your doctor and get an appointment tomorrow. In fact, you should get an appointment tonight because you need some drugs. You might need some counseling. You certainly need some medication. If you do not think the Titans are the worst team in the NFL, you are an absolute jabroni. Get help. Seek it. I'm giving you advice here. You can take it or leave it. There's nothing. There's no words. Bye week. It doesn't matter. The Titans, you literally fade them on the spread. It's free money. That's how bad they are. The Vegas can't figure it out. So at number 32, the Tennessee Titans. The second worst team in football is the New York Jets. Yes, I still have the Jets at 31. And some of you might be wondering, Mitch, didn't they just win like their last two games? Guys, they beat the Cleveland Browns because of not one, but two kick returns. I'm not fazed. They traded Quinnen Williams. They traded Sauce Gardner. You guys know how I feel about Aaron Glenn. It starts with a J. It ends with an Oni. Yeah. And Justin Fields, their quarterback, threw for 54 yards against the Cleveland Browns. One of his completions was a screen for 42 of the 54 yards. The Jets have no passing game. Garrett Wilson is injured. Their defense lost their two most talented players. This team only won against Cleveland because of special teams. It's not a repeatable formula. This team will stink for the rest of the season. Almost as free of a win as the Tennessee Titans. At number 30, the Cleveland Browns, who lost to the Jets. Now, Cleveland, on the surface, has an elite defense, and they showcased that against the Jets. They mostly held them in check. And like I said, they had numerous sacks. They held Justin Fields to under 55 yards passing, which is incredible. And they still lost, which again speaks to why they're number 30. The offense actually moved the ball a little bit better than most weeks. They certainly in the box score outplayed the Jets. But there's an intangible with the Cleveland Browns that is hard to rank. They simply don't know how to win. They only know how to lose. And Dillon Gabriel right now might be the worst starting quarterback, including Justin Fields. And I was a Dillon Gabriel guy coming out of the draft. I thought that he would be a competent, low-end starting quarterback. I thought he could be a really good backup. Has not been the case so far. They probably should have beat the Jets. Their defense does keep them competitive in a lot of games. But when it comes down to winning and losing, there isn't really a team that is more reliable at losing games than Cleveland. So at number 30, I have the Browns. At number 29, the New Orleans Saints, who got a little bit of a upgrade at quarterback with Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck was one of my favorites in the draft. I had him second behind Cam Ward, and I thought he should have been a first-round pick. And honestly, he looked really good against Carolina. I thought he threw the ball really well. He showcased his arm. He showcased his movement. He showcased his composure, maybe a little bit of his experience. Maybe the Saints have something there. It would be nice to find out whether or not they do have something before the draft so that they could maybe build the rest of the roster. I think moving forward, when you look at the Saints, if Shuck is the guy, or he's maybe enough to give a year next season, you look at the youthful offensive line. Maybe they could use a little bit of upgrades on the inside. They do have a number one receiver in Chris Olave, but you could always use a 2. They probably need to upgrade running back, but that's not really worth a first-round pick. Defensive line is always a need that high in the draft. Corner could certainly use some help. They are old at safety, Justin Reed, right? And then linebacker Demario Davis. So there's going to be plenty of needs for the Saints, but that's exactly my point. If they can avoid it being quarterback this year, and maybe Shuck shows enough to give them a season of play to maybe see if he's the guy or not, then all of a sudden that second-round pick looks pretty good. And all of a sudden now you've got a franchise quarterback out of a second-round pick, and you're building around that player. Not bad. A lot of people criticize them for that pick as a throwaway. But sometimes it's never a throwaway when a quarterback has some traits, and it's the most important position in the league and in the sport, and it turns around a franchise. I've been saying, though, the Saints do have enough talent to remain competitive. They have young, good tackles. They have some weapons. They have a coach that I think is trying his hardest, and I think he's had buy-in from his roster. And the defensive line is still solid, and they're very competent against the run. They just struggle sometimes to get to the quarterback. They struggle sometimes to cover. But overall, the Saints are, I think, a tier above the really bad teams, where they're just good enough to kind of compete and give you a little bit of a scare sometimes. I have them at 29. I'm compelled by Shuck, though, for the rest of the year. At number 28, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are at number 28. And the Raiders, honestly, I'm not sure really where to rank them, because they have looked better the last couple of weeks. They went to overtime with Jacksonville, and they barely lost to the Broncos on the road on a Thursday night. The Jacksonville loss was a little bit prettier than the Denver loss. The Denver loss was atrocious. The Denver loss was boring. It was dull. It was barely football. But I do feel like they've improved since the bye week. I just don't really know what I can hang my hat on with this team. I don't know exactly what they're great at. The defensive line, I guess, plays hard. They play physical. They don't lay down, right? They're solid against the run. The offensive line has been a bit better since the bye week, but last week it still got absolutely destroyed by Nick Bonito and company. The receiving core is weak. The run game is inconsistent. Geno is banged up. Brock Bowers, brilliant against Jacksonville. Nowhere to be seen against Denver. Poor game planning. Think their coaching is overrated. Big names, Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, not the same coaches they used to be. And the defense just basically doesn't have a secondary. So, the Raiders are very flawed. But there still seems to be something when you look at that logo on the schedule. You're like, and I did this with the Broncos. I was like, there's a possibility the Raiders hang in this game and win. There's something about Geno, Bowers, like just enough of a competent Max Crosby, just enough there where it's like they could maybe pull off an upset. So that's why I have them at number 28. At number 27, the Washington Commanders. This is a very bad football team. Honestly, very bad. If it weren't for Cliff and honestly like a good backup Marcus Mariota, I think this would be maybe number 32. Like, I think Mariota is probably played the best out of all the quarterbacks I've probably talked about so far. I think that their run game is still a threat for teams to defend. But one of the noticeable things about Washington this year is how old they are and how slow they look. Without Terry McLaurin, there just feels like there is no burner on offense. There's no speed on offense, and that translates to the defense. The linebackers, the middle of the field is slow. They can't keep up in man coverage. The offense doesn't have any verticality. Every one of their playmakers is slow. Debo's running in mud. Zach Ertz is ancient. Bill is like quicker than fast. He's not explosive. None of their playmakers are speed demons, and it shows. Their entire offense is horizontal, and I don't know, like, Dan Quinn's probably not going to be able to save this defense. They have no edge rush. Their interior defensive linemen are punching people in the face. This just feels like a team that was poorly constructed, went all in an off season, and it totally backfired, and it's just classic Commanders. So they are a really bad team. I know they've played some good teams lately, like the Lions in Seattle, but they have looked completely uncompetitive. And that's the underlying point. At number 26, New York. Now, this is assuming Jackson Dart plays most of the games. With Russell Wilson, I think the Giants are a bottom 3, bottom 4 team. I think Jackson Dart has certainly showed he's a playmaker. I think if Giants fans are excited about anything, I think it's the fact that they do have a pretty good foundation and a pretty good young core of players. Yes, Malik Neighbors injured, but he'll be back. He's an elite receiver. Jackson Dart looks very promising at quarterback. Cam Scatterbo, if he can stay healthy, feels like a heart and soul runner. They do have a left tackle in Andrew Thomas. They do have Abdul Carter and Dexter Lawrence on defense. And Brian Burns. I mean, Brian Burns has been awesome. So they have a lot of foundational pieces in the right spots. Tackle, receiver, edge, quarterback. So the New York Giants, that's what I'd be looking forward to if I was a G-Men fan. Now, you've got to find the right coach. You got to hire the right guy. And that's a tough experience, especially for the Giants for the last, 10 years. Since Tom Coughlin, this team has not been able to hire a coach. Tom Coughlin was a pretty good coach. He had his moments. Of course, he won 2 Super Bowls, right? Since then, I mean, I feel like there's been no consistency for this franchise. So, Jackson Dart continues to impress. You got to keep him healthy, though. You can't keep running him into the line of scrimmage. You can't treat him like Cam Newton. He's more talented than Tim Tebow, right? He's got more to him than just running the ball. Like, yeah, he's probably Tim Tebow. Who's that? Tim Tebow with a hint more swag and a little bit more of an arm, right? Like, so that's kind of what he is. But yeah, I just feel like the Giants, if I was a fan, I'd be kind of like I was as a Patriots fan last year. I don't know if I'm as high on Dart as I am on May last season, but there's some similarities, probably even more talent around the quarterback in New York than there was in New England, but at least there's hope. There's a hopeful vibe. So at number 26, the Giants. Number 25, the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are at 25. Joe Burrow wants to come back. I don't really understand why. This team has next to no hope to make the playoffs. And they're atrocious. This is a bad football team. And mostly because the defense is literally indefensible. And what I mean by that is you can't defend how bad they are. That's really what it is. Trey Hendrickson's beat up, and therefore they have no defense. He is the defense. So if I'm a Bengals fan, Of course, I'm probably hoping Joe Burrow doesn't want to play. I'm going to ride this out with Joe Flacco. We're going to get the best possible draft pick possible. We're going to restock this defense. Hopefully the Bengals can get their head out of their rear end. Maybe make some changes at head coach, Zach Taylor. We'll see. But I think most importantly, they need to completely reshape this defense. And that probably includes moving on from Trey Hendrickson. But moving forward, Joe Flacco's been fun. Jamar Chase is still playing at an all-time high level. And their offense has been absolutely humming. They're going to keep them relevant. They're going to keep them fun. They're going to keep them in games as an upset special type team. But I wouldn't expect more than that because they can't stop anybody. Right? They're going to hang in a lot of games because of Flacco. I think they're more threatening than a lot of the teams I've already discussed. But I don't want Joe Burrow to come back. There's no chance they make the playoffs. And even if they do, they're not going to be very compelling if they get there because they can't stop anybody. Number 24, the Miami Dolphins. Miami, I have to give Mike McDaniel a ton of credit, the entire staff. This team clearly still has not given up. Despite Tyreek Hill celebrating when he went down and injured on the cart, this team has still tried to fight. They're not that talented. I mean, this is one of the least talented secondaries on paper in the NFL. This is one of the weakest offensive lines in the NFL. This is one of the weakest receiving cores in the NFL. I really feel like Mike McDaniel has kept this team afloat. And if I was a Dolphins fan, I'd be fighting to keep that guy as my coach. I know that he has his flaws, but I think it's easier to hire people around a guy's flaws than it is to pivot and find a different guy who's going to have different flaws. Like the Dolphins may fire Mike McDaniel, they might hire a really good culture building coach, but then all of a sudden that coach doesn't know how to scheme offense and doesn't know how to get the most out of his playmakers, like Achane and Waddle. So there's going to be problems with every coach, and I think that's something that people miss sometimes. Sure, Mike McDaniel isn't the biggest alpha male, rah, locker room player coach there's ever been. In fact, he might be a little soft, but in terms of calling plays, in terms of offensive scheme, in terms of being up at the top of evolution for offensive football, which is so important in the current NFL, he's on a short list. Like, people are copying his motions. People are copying his formations. People are copying his offense. That has to count for something. And to me, like, Tua has been part of the problem. Greer has probably been the biggest problem because he has been Tua's number one fan. And he's done everything in his power to make that work because he doesn't want it to fail. Defensively, I feel like they've played a lot harder, a lot faster lately, and I thought they played really well against the Bills. I thought they were flying around, hitting people, stopping the run fairly well. You know, even chasing down Josh Allen, covering in the back end really well. Some of their younger guys in the secondary have shown up, some of their draft picks. So Miami, usually a meme for me, but I have to thank them for beating the Bills. We sang the entire theme song. We sang the entire song. The Miami Dolphins, number 1, baby. So I have them at number 24 because of that. At number 23, the Atlanta Falcons, who got their asses kicked by the Miami Dolphins. I understand. Again, guys, these power rankings aren't strictly based on head-to-head. If I did that, I'd have a headache every single week trying to do these power rankings. But Atlanta, they're a tough team to rank for me every week because they hang around against good teams like New England and Indianapolis, and they beat a team like Buffalo. But at the same time, they just feel like they always kick themselves in the butt. They always beat themselves in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's Raheem Morris, whether it's Michael Penix, no matter what it is, kicking, it could be anything. They'll find a way, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. They find ways to lose. But Drake London is outstanding. Bijan is a boss. The O-line, even beat up, still looks pretty competent. Michael Penix, though, I'm going to say it again. Like, there's fans of Michael Penix out there. I'm not one of them. I think he's way too inaccurate and inconsistent. And he can run, but he chooses not to. And he only targets the perimeter. I don't love their offensive scheme under Zach Robinson. I don't love how much they use pistol. I don't love that they don't use more play action. There's things I'd like to see different. Defensively, I really respect them. I just feel like I wish they were better against the run. They're maybe a little bit too small on defense. They're a little bit too fast. They're a fast defense, but they're small and they can get ran over. And we've seen that. So you can't let Jonathan Taylor, like that's the number one thing against the Colts. You can't let Jonathan Taylor go for 200 yards. That's how you lose a game. But they could have won that game against the Colts. It went to overtime, right? They nearly tied it up against the Patriots. So to me, the Falcons are a competitive team with I think, a talented roster. I mean, if you swapped Kyle Shanahan and Raheem Morris and even Mac Jones and Michael Penix, how good would the Falcons be? I mean, they might be in the NFC Championship. I really think it's that big of a difference. So, at number 23, the Atlanta Falcons. At number 22, the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are not nearly as talented as the Falcons, but they're the definition of a team that believes in their identity. And you can see that their talent sometimes fails them when they play a team like the Saints and their identity does not come through. So they're a team that wants to be physical. They want to bully you. They want to overpower you. And when that does not happen, they can very well lose to anyone because their talent isn't there. The receiver depth is not there. They don't have competent tight end play. They don't have good wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 play. The quarterback is below average. The defense, their pass rush is subpar. Their linebackers are Their safeties are So, Carolina's a team that I think is actually pretty well coached because they lean into what they do really well. Bryce Young hasn't been good enough to uplift everybody. You'd like to see more there. But this is a team that, if they play to their identity, they run the ball, they stop the run, they play physical, they can hang with anybody. They can beat the Falcons 30-0. They can beat the Packers in Lambeau. So the Panthers, that's an example of not very talented, but you got to respect them. At number 21, Arizona. Arizona embarrassed me on Sunday. I thought they would be close against Seattle. But hey, 2 defensive touchdowns early in the game. That just allows the game to spiral out of control. And there's simply no defending it, no coming back from it. Arizona, I respect because I think Gannon does a good job with the defense. I think that they're competent in most areas. They're not really great in any area. I wouldn't look at the Cardinals and say, hey, they have a really dominant pass rush. They have a really dominant run game. They have a really dominant secondary. There's no area of the Cardinals, and this is why they're not a playoff team. This is why they're the worst team in their division. Because they're just okay in every area. They don't have anything that makes you say, wow. Trey McBride is a really great player. Right? Some of their defensive line, I think, has their moments. Calais Campbell is ageless. Josh Sweat has his moments. I really like what I saw from Walter Nolan, but he's got to stay healthy. Buda Baker sometimes makes you say, wow. Will Johnson this year as a rookie makes you say, wow. But as a cohesive whole, pass game, offensively, run defense, pass defense, there's nothing about them that's like striking. They're just well-roundedly mid. That's why I have them at number 21. At number 20, the Vikings. The Vikings are kind of in that Cardinal category, but they're a much more talented team, I kind of think. At least similarly talented. I think offensively they're a lot more talented. But it's an example of a team that doesn't really have a constant at quarterback. And then at the same time, they have, I think, really great coaching. I've been a little underwhelmed by Kevin O'Connell, but I think Brian Flores is as good as it gets as a defensive coach. I think that they can ruin a game through their defense, and they can win a game through their receiving core. So there's elements of the Vikings where it's not as consistent. Like, I feel like the Cardinals are more of a consistently mid team. I feel like the Vikings are more, sometimes they can be really awesome, sometimes they can be really bad, and it's like, are their blitzes connecting? Are they getting pressure? Or are they giving up big plays? And then on the other side is J.J. McCarthy processing the information? Is he making the right throw? Is he making an accurate throw? You know, are their receivers on it? Can they run the ball this week? So, it's not been Kevin O'Connell's best year. J.J. McCarthy, I have a lot of questions about. I don't know if he's ever going to be the guy. The offensive line has been up and down and injured constantly. The defense, I thought, held them in the game against the Ravens. Like, they kept it from being a blowout. But they're simply just not good enough in certain areas to beat these really talented quarterbacks or teams. They're not good enough in the secondary. They get exposed. They're not good enough at quarterback. So, at number 20, I have the Vikings. 19, Jacksonville. Jacksonville continues to kind of regress. Last week, they lost to the Texans, a Texans team that spotted them 17, a Texans team without their quarterback, a Texans team that Davis Mills ripped up Jacksonville. And seeing this defense fall apart before our eyes is the reason they're probably not going to reach the playoffs. Travis Hunter out for the season, rest up, get better for the sophomore campaign. We'll see you later. Jacoby Myers, he made a couple catches, but we'll see more of an impact down the stretch. I'm just not a big believer in the Jacksonville Jags. I don't think they have a great pass rush. I don't think they have a great secondary. In fact, I think both of those units are below average right now. I do like their linebackers, and I do think their run defense is solid. On offense, I think their run offense is solid, but I think Trevor Lawrence is extremely inconsistent. And their pass game, their pass protection, their offensive line, all spotty. The receiver play, Parker Washington has been awesome. One of their best players. But Brian Thomas is now injured and has been inconsistent. It's just an inconsistent, talented, kind of annoying, flawed, but there's something there for people to believe in, but it's not quite enough for me to be like, that's a playoff team. They're all over the map. They're all over the place, and it feels like they've gotten worse. And that's not a good sign for Liam Cohen. That's not a good sign for this team. At number 19, number 18, Dallas. Dallas doesn't have a great record, but I'm looking at this team post-bye week. They traded for Quinnen Williams, a stud defensive tackle. All of a sudden, their defensive line could be one of the best in football. You got Quinnen Williams and a Diggy Zua beside each other. That's a problem. You have Kenny Clark. That's a problem. You got Ezeraku, who's coming on as a rookie. Jadeveon Clowney, who's looked good as an ageless defensive end. That's a really solid group of defensive linemen. Williams on top of it. And then Logan Wilson traded for. Overshown's returning soon. Donovan Wilson and Hooker are returning soon at safety. Their rookie Revel could be in play down the stretch here at corner. So the defense could be completely revamped and all of a sudden could be much more closer to mid than bad. And if they do get a mid defense with this offense, that's a wild card caliber team. That's a much scarier team than they have been. Because basically what the Cowboys have been this year is an offense with no defense whatsoever. Them and the Bengals have been terrible on defense and kind of a mirror of each other. Dallas, if they can get that defense cooking after these trades and some of these returns, that could be a team that pushes for a playoff spot. They might be a little bit too late, but these power rankings aren't based on are you going to make the playoffs. They're based on what is your quality of your team at this moment in time. So I need to see it before I believe it, but I'm higher on them than most. At number 17, not Jacksonville, I'm sorry. Number 17 is Chicago, and I honestly think Dallas is probably better than Chicago right now, but Chicago has a much better record. I kind of know what Chicago is right now. Chicago did beat Dallas earlier in the year, so there are reasons for it, but like the new look Dallas defense is probably a lot better than this Chicago defense, which is struggling with everybody they play. Sure, they're getting the odd sack and the odd turnover, but I just feel like they are incompetent in all areas. They can't really cover. They can't really stop the run. I mean, the Giants, they ran the Bears over with Jackson Dart. And it's not like the Giants have a really talented offense, and they were getting shredded week after week after week. Offensively, Caleb I thought he was solid against the Giants. He had good moments later in the game, and I thought he put together a couple nice drives. But he is inconsistent. He is kind of like a Trevor Lawrence, where it's like, yeah, you flash the talent, but can you be consistent within the offense? Can you consistently make the right throw? Can you consistently make the right decision? Can you consistently step up to the plate? And it doesn't feel like it's there consistently. But Ben Johnson runs a great offense. The run game's really good. I think this is the best offensive line no one talks about. I mean, Darnell Wright is an all-pro. Joe Tooney's incredible. Really good offensive line. Their run game's really good. The offense I believe in. I think they can score 20+ against basically everybody. So that gives them a chance in a lot of games. So that's why I have them around 17. But they do have a really tough schedule, and they've kind of been barely surviving against pretty bad teams. Number 16, Pittsburgh. I don't know what to do with this team. This team does feel like Pittsburgh of the last couple of years, where they've started off the season fairly well, and they will continue to fade down the stretch. They have been exposed by good teams like the Packers and like the Chargers. That being said, they also found a way to beat the Colts. Now, the games against good teams that they've won have been on the back of 5 or 6 turnovers. The games against the Colts and the Patriots, they only won those games because they had 5 and 6 turnovers forced. And what I thought was a really bad sign against the Chargers is everything that I thought the defense looked against the Colts, where they looked a lot better in coverage, their pass rush looked a lot better. I felt like there were moments of that. It wasn't as bad as watching them against the Bengals, but certainly not to the degree of dominance I would have thought against a very beat-up Chargers offensive line. I thought the Steelers' defense was going to dominate that game, and that did not happen. But the biggest thing that really worries me about the Steelers is the look of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers looked atrocious against the Chargers. He was making dumb decisions, looked like he had way too much ayahuasca. He was off his rocker in that game, and he was making bad throws. So the fear for the Steelers is that Rodgers can no longer be physically capable of holding up in the pocket. He's scared of pressure. He's scared of making a throw. And when he does, it's a dumb decision. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the age of this team, this defense, this quarterback. And obviously the lack of weapons has always been relevant throughout the season. So I could see this team somewhat falling apart. I still think they'll pick up some wins against some of the weaker opponents. Tomlin will try to fight for his 9 wins, but I'm not sure they're a playoff team. Number 15. Sorry, Chicago. San Francisco is at number 15. The 49ers are just a team that's ran out of talent, specifically on defense. I actually thought their offense played really well against the Rams. The only time they were stopped against the number 1 EPA defense in football was on 4th down, twice. Other than that, they weren't really stopped for the entire game. They failed a 4th and 1. They failed a 4th and 3 or 4th and 4 or something like that. Both of them could have been converted. I thought Mac Jones played really well in the game. I thought he was very decisive, accurate. I thought, like, from an accuracy standpoint, he was really good in that game. Like, where the ball placement was actually incredible. I thought he played really well. The offensive line, I thought, played really well against the Rams once again. McCaffrey did his work in the passing game. Kittle looked like Kittle, which is a big positive for them moving forward. Jawan Jennings looks healthier. Big positive for them moving forward. Ricky Pearsall should be returning this week. That would be massive. I do think Purdy gives them more of a ceiling on offense, but it's hard to take Mac Jones off the field the way that he's playing. And if I'm a 49er fan, I'm almost kind of just hoping Purdy can get back when he's truly 100%, because I don't want to push him onto the field and have something really bad happen. But the defense is just really bad. And an elite offense with a good play caller and a great quarterback only makes it look worse. Without Mykel Williams, their run defense looked atrocious. Just very consistent gains on the ground. Robert Saleh can't seem to get these guys to properly execute a blitz. Their four-man pass rush looked bad. And their coverage. I feel like some games they play really well, and then some games they just don't play to the level of expectation. So they need to figure out a way for this defense to just survive, give the offense a chance to win these games. If it's bend but don't break, then it's bend but don't break. But the 49ers need to find a formula for the end of this season to play through the offense, because that's the only way they can win these games against good teams. It's the only way. They need to be able to play through the offense. The offense needs to be able to possess the ball. They need to be able to score 24 plus points a game, and that's the way they need to play it. That's their only hope. But these coaches need to coach their ass off. I think that's what Kyle's been doing all year at number 15. At number 14, I have the Texans. Best defense in the league. They spotted Jacksonville 17, as I brought up. All of the possessions were within the Texans side of the field. And the Texans defense just allows their offense to get shit together on a regular basis. And it allows their team more lives than any other team. The amount of turnovers they cause, the amount of sacks they cause, blocked field goals, red zone stops. The Texans turned it over at their own 35, no problem. 3 and out and a field goal. We'll get it back. This team is consistently crippled by the offense. It's consistently crippled by the offensive line, the penalties. It's consistently crippled by dumb, stupid decisions. But I feel like they're starting to peak at the right time. I thought Mills looked good. I thought the O-line played pretty well. Trent Brown looked pretty good in place of Howard. Maybe Howard could slide to guard. They could put Trent Brown out there. Woody Marks looked good. Nico looked incredible. I think they're starting to get, Higgins more involved. Schultz looks good. They're starting to kind of understand what they want to do with these playmakers and what the offensive structure needs to look like. I think Kaylee deserves some love for that. But the offensive line has slowly been getting better, even if it's not extremely talented. But they do need Stroud moving forward. Defensively, they're incredible. I'm just a little bit worried about all the concussions going around in Houston. But this is a team I would not want to play down the stretch, because if they can figure out half an offense, they're going to be a team that can beat just about anybody that remains on their schedule. At number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers. They shocked me with this performance against the Steelers. I picked the Steelers to win that game, and a lot of people did pick the Chargers, and I give them credit for that, but I just couldn't understand how they were going to be able to block and survive. I just feel like without Joe Alt, they've looked atrocious blocking teams all year, and somehow Justin Herbert found a way to elevate his team. The defense just played lights out, and I think that was the biggest difference, where the defense gave the offense so much time to figure their shit out that eventually the dam broke for the Steelers defense, and Justin Herbert was able to make some throws, and they were able to break off some runs. And I think Greg Roman deserves some credit. Vidal deserves some credit. I like their weapons, as I've mentioned all year. I think this is the peak of Justin Herbert that we've been seeing this season. I think this is the best I've ever seen him play. Defensively, I really like their defense. When they have Khalil Mack, I think their pass rush gives them something. And then I just really like how they're structured on the back end. I really love watching their effort. I love watching their speed. I think Derwin James and Henley are just one of the best combinations to watch in the middle of the field that there is in the NFL. So the Chargers at number 13, I think they're a competent football team, a well-rounded team, a well-put-together team. I just worry about the Achilles heel, which is the offensive line. The offensive line. There's going to be matchups where it exposes the offensive line, and that's going to be why they lose some of these games. But it's going to be hard to really tell when those games will pop up, because I don't know. I thought it was going to be the Steelers, but I guess it wasn't. I don't know. Number 12, the Denver Broncos, who might be one of the teams that could expose the Chargers in that department. But Denver, their problem is they don't have an offense. Bo Nix is terrible at football. I don't care what you tell me. The offensive line is good, and that's what frustrates me the most about Denver. They've got to be the most frustrating team in the AFC because, well, maybe the Texans, but the Broncos, they have a brilliant defense. They have an awesome pass rush. Their defensive line, I mean, they might have four Pro Bowls, I should say. Maybe not all pros, but 4 Pro Bowlers across the board. Cooper, Benito, Franklin Myers, Zach Allen. In any given moment, I think those guys could be a Pro Bowler, right? Secondary-wise, they've held it together without Pat Surtain, which is a big plus for Vance Joseph. Congratulations, you're doing a great job. But, man, I love the pressure they can bring, and I think they stop the run well. And on offense, I just feel like their run game is not good enough to really like be the staple, the go-to, the real main ingredient of the offense. Their running backs aren't good enough. They really, for some reason, just can't generate enough on the ground against good opponents on defense. And then through the air, like erratic quarterback play, not great playmakers. Evan Ingram's kind of washed. Franklin is more of a 3 than he is a 2. Sutton is good, but teams kind of know how to take him away, and they just run these stupid screen swing pass stuff, and I don't know, Sean Payton is kind of lost. I don't really know what's going on with Sean Payton because he seems to be insistent that Bo Nix is good. I don't know if he watches the tape, so the Broncos, I just am lower on them than a lot of people. A lot of people still think they're going to win their division. I don't think that's going to happen, honestly. I just feel like they can't score points, and that's going to come back to cripple them at some point. I really like their defense, and sure, they can play with anybody, but I just don't know, man. I just feel like they're going to hit a wall, and I see this team more as a one and done than I do as a number 1 seed. That's kind of the way that I read them right now. At number 11, I have the Packers. I am just completely discouraged by this team that I picked to represent the NFC. And of course, I could have some excuses, right? Like Tucker Kraft's out, Jaden Reed's out. There's been some injuries for the offense that have crippled this offense. But the biggest thing, it comes down to Matt LaFleur has not coached well this year. I don't think Matt LaFleur, as the offensive-minded play caller that he's supposed to be, has put together a compelling offense or one that I really like to watch. It's an offense that, I honestly, if I were formulating an offense, it's everything I don't like. The team runs the ball too much, too predictably, with a running back that is good, but I honestly kind of think is overrated. I love Josh Jacobs, but I don't know if he's the same guy he was last year or 3 years ago or anything like that. He just doesn't have the juice he used to have, and it's kind of just annoying to watch them run the ball so much. They have some talented players like Christian Watson, and they just choose to target them twice a game, and it makes no sense. The offense is all based on the explosive plays that defenses just know how to take away. The entire offense is run and shot play, and I've been talking about this for 2 years, and defenses have finally caught up. And it doesn't feel like Matt LaFleur knows how to generate offense from anybody besides the running back or the slot receiver. It's really weird. Jordan Love, to me, is one of the most overrated players in football. I just feel like he doesn't read defenses well. I feel like he stares down his first read too much. I feel like his accuracy is spottier than a lot of the elite quarterbacks. His deep ball hasn't been very good this year. I think that his pocket navigation is pretty strong. His ability to throw under pressure is pretty strong. He does have a talented arm. There's admirable traits, but I do feel like he has not taken that step to grow in his game. And a lot of these guys that I think that the defense is good and the defense is fast and the front seven is awesome. I think it's elite. But the secondary can be had in certain matchups. The Eagles aren't going to be one of those teams to expose it, but they will be exposed. To me, they just have right now, it's the biggest thing is the offense. The offense is just nowhere near where it needs to be a contender. So at number 11, I have to put the Packers. At number 10, the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are going to be high on my list, but lower for others because of the standings. But again, guys, this is not a standings rankings. This is based on my feel for the team at this moment in time and what I project moving forward. And the Baltimore Ravens have an elite quarterback. They have a really good offense that basically is 24 minimum a week, And there's not a lot of teams that you can find that are like that, pretty much no matter the matchup. The offensive line isn't great, but it's good enough, and they're certainly powerful in the run game. Derrick Henry is not quite the king anymore, but he still can put up king performances. Zay Flowers is good. I like their tight ends still, even if they're not super dynamic. I think one of the things that I don't love about the Ravens in their current form is, other than Zay, I really don't think their weapons are as dynamic as they were even last year. Like, I haven't seen a ton from Rashad Bateman this year. I haven't seen a ton from Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely consistently. Derrick Henry's not quite the same guy he was last year. I actually want to see more Keaton Mitchell. The defense, though, I think has played a lot better, and I love this secondary, how they're playing. I think their secondary is playing awesome. Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, Starks, Wiggins, these guys are playing unbelievable. And I think that's put this defense together. Roquan's also played a lot better. I do worry about the pass rush sometimes. The run defense didn't get tested against the Vikings. But I do think this is a top 10 team. This is a dark horse caliber team for the Ravens at number 10. At number 9, the Bucs. The Bucs, I don't want to grade too harshly because I think they played an underrated Patriots team that is actually a lot better than people think. Even if you think they're good, they're probably better than you think. And at the same time, the Bucs are beat up, especially on offense. And I just kind of want to see them get healthier on offense. Now, I'm a little worried that the offensive scheme just isn't quite good enough for them to be this complete overall team. And that their defense, while is very good, just has this tendency to give up explosive plays that I really don't like and can be backbreaking against other good teams. Like, they tended to do this against New England and the Lions. Like, the Lions didn't really generate a lot of offense, less so than the Patriots, but when they did, they were explosive plays. And that's kind of what I hate about the Bucs defense, is there's a couple plays a game that turn the tide of a playoff game, and they're kind of giving those plays up. Even if they're stellar against the run 90% of the time, and they're sticky in coverage 90% of the time, it feels like there's those moments where they just give up egregious big plays. And then offensively, I think Baker played well against the Patriots. I don't think he played bad by any means. I thought the offensive line with Gedeke looked better. Not great, but better. I thought they gave up some key pressures on the inside in key moments, but that comes down to Bredesen getting injured and stuff. But the guard play is going to be a problem for the rest of the year. But they're missing Mike Evans. I don't think Chris Godwin is a big deal, but I do think Bucky Irving is. I think they're missing Bucky Irving in terms of their run game, the explosiveness of it, the screen game, the explosiveness of it. I think Bucky and Evans are huge for this football team. So I think that they're still a borderline NFC contender, but they need to get Evans and Bucky on the field. If they don't have those guys, they don't really have a chance going anywhere in the playoffs. At number 8, the Bills. The Bills are obviously very flawed. And the biggest things are, this is a team that can't seem to overcome turnovers this year. They're not talented enough. Their defense can't bail out their offense when they turn it over. And they have a problem where if James Cook doesn't go off, the offense isn't the same. And their receiving core is a huge problem. I would make a strong argument this is the worst receiving core in football. And Bills fans will like to tell me that the receivers don't matter. It definitely does matter. Every Super Bowl champion over the last 7 years, 8 years, 9 years plus has had at least one incredible threat in the receiving game. And the Bills just don't have that. The best guy they got is Dalton Kincaid, and he hurts his hamstring every game. And, Khalil Shakir is a one-trick pony. He's a great slot receiver in terms of being a short, run-after-catch guy and a screen guy. And that's really it. They have no perimeter threat. And guys, I've been saying for weeks, Josh Palmer is a lot more important for this offense than people want to say. He is really big for them because Keon Coleman sucks. Like, he's actually really bad. Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore have brought nothing to the table. And I just hate to see, Josh Allen play in this offense because he's got nothing around him. Every big play they made against Miami was him doing a miracle play, like running around being Superman. It's just not sustainable, right? And teams are going to be able to stop the run in the playoffs. You think you're going to be able to run the ball against the Patriots? That's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. Defensively, I think they're good against the pass, but I think they're bad against the run, and it's crippling. So The Bills have problems. I still believe, though, at their best, they can beat anybody. I think at their best, they can go on a dangerous run. This is a team that can catch fire. This is a team that can catch momentum and take it all the way. But they're going to have to fix their flaws. They're going to have to at least get better against the run. They're going to have to get better at receiver or in terms of figuring out this passing game. So at number 8, the Bills. Number 7, the Chiefs. I know the Bills beat the Chiefs, but if you were to ask me who has a better chance against most of the contenders, if I were to say Chiefs against Colts, Chiefs against Patriots, Chiefs against Eagles, Chiefs against Lions, if you were to ask me all those questions and I were to go Bills against those teams, I think that the Chiefs would win more of those games. That's why I have them at 7. Despite more losses, despite not a good record, the Chiefs really have a couple flaws. They can't run the ball to save their lives, and their pass rush is not great. Other than that, they're a good football team. I actually don't think Mahomes has played as well as people want to say he has, and I thought that was kind of spotlighted, highlighted by the Bills game, and I actually think Allen's played better than him this year, but Mahomes has real receivers. Mahomes has his Worthy, he has his Rice, he has his Kelsey, he has Hollywood as a 4, right? He has Tyquan as a 5. He's got competent threats. He's got Andy Reid. He's got a solid offensive line. Now, the left tackle's got to be there. He's got to have his head on, but that would be a problem. Like, the offensive line has been good this year 90% of the time, right? Simmons has got to be there, though. He's got to be healthy, because if not, that's a problem. Because that guy that they signed from the Niners looks terrible every time he gets on the field. They've got to generate some sort of run game to be able to win in the playoffs. They've got to be able to do something, whether it's getting under center, right? They've got to do something. Like, the run game just can't be a absolute non-factor. Like, teams have to respect it a little bit, right? And then at the same time, they feel like they have problems when they're just like, there's too much backyard football, like not enough surgicality sometimes. That is when they're at their best, is when they do have the surgicality within the offense and Mahomes is getting the ball out fast. That's when they're at their best. Defensively, I think that they're solid. They're good even, but they're not great, and they certainly have their flaws. They're not as good against the run as they have been. I think that their pass defense is not as good either, because they are not as good with their front 4. And I'm really puzzled as to why they didn't make a trade. Because I think Spags will solve the run game issues to a certain degree come playoff time, but there's nothing you can do about Charles Omenihu not being able to get to the quarterback. Mike Dana's not the same player. And I think the biggest thing with the Chiefs is these role players just aren't the same guys. They're just not. I think their corners are pretty good, but... And this is a good team. It's a good team. They don't have many flaws. But good offense, very good offense. I think they have a good defense. I just don't think the defense is as good as they've been. And I feel like the offense is a little bit better in the passing game, but they have like no run game at all. And that's like, it's just a glaring weakness. Number 6, not the Bills, sorry. Indianapolis. I was not impressed by the Colts for the most part against the Falcons, but they should have been leading that game at half. I mean, they went for it on 4th down where they really shouldn't have early in the game. They missed a field goal. They missed an extra point. They should have been leading, and I feel like if they're leading at half, it kind of makes you think of the game differently. But I've been discouraged by Daniel Jones. This is kind of where I was hesitant to put them above the Chiefs, because I would actually pick the Chiefs to beat the Colts in a game. I would. But I feel like the Colts their run game is awesome. Their pass game is good. I'm just a little worried about Daniel Jones taking too many sacks or making boneheaded plays. Atlanta sacked him like 7 times. I don't know what's going on with the offensive line. And then defensively, I think without Buckner, they're clearly a different unit, but they're going to get Sauce. They're going to get Ward together. That's going to be fun to watch. I like Steichen. I like Lou. The thing is, like, for example, I think the Colts are a really tough matchup for the Bills. But I think the Bills are a really tough matchup for the Chiefs. But I think the Chiefs are a really tough matchup for the Colts. If that makes sense. So, It's kind of like in the AFC, it's kind of like a pick your poison type deal. But like, that's why I have them because they've been more reliable than the Chiefs and the Bills. They've just been beating teams more consistently and coming through for you on a weekly basis. They're 8-2, right? For a reason. I think they're 8-2, if I'm not mistaken. So I have them at number 6. I do want to see them beat an elite team, though. I want to see how they play against, down the stretch, they're going to play a lot of them. I think they play the Seahawks in Seattle. They play the Chiefs in Kansas City. They play the elite Texans defense. We're going to see how they look. Okay, so at number 6, the Colts. Number 5, the Lions. I think the Lions are very similar to Indy. I think the Colts have the better run game. The Colts have the better O-line. But I think that the Lions have more belief from me. I've seen them do it before. I like their quarterback more. I like their weapons slightly more. And I feel like their defense, I like their style of their defense. Even if they might be fairly even in terms of talent on both teams. But I feel like the Lions, I just like their style. And Aiden Hutchinson might be the factor that I'm kind of thinking, like, he might be the difference between the two teams. But, like, these two teams kind of feel like mirror images. Quarterbacks that kind of need to be propped up. They kind of need a good run game. They kind of need play action. They kind of need to be systemly strong. The offensive line needs to protect them. The way that you beat the Lions and the Colts is the same. You unravel the quarterback. That's how you beat them. I do think the Lions are a lot more predictable defensively. But I also think that style of defense wins in the playoffs. Little over aggressive, sometimes too blitz happy, but man coverage, physical, run game, defense, play the run. Those are things that win in January. So the Lions and Colts are very close. The Lions, as well as the Colts, have not fared well against what I would call good teams. The Chiefs game comes to mind. The Packers game comes to mind. They did beat the Bucs, a beat-up Bucs. They were beat up as well, right? We're going to see them against the Eagles. Because it feels like they have been exposed in certain matchups on offense, which is weird. Dan Campbell now calling plays could be a huge factor moving forward to make them catapult into my top 3. If he's doing well on that side of things. He did against Washington, but it's Washington. Number 4, New England. The difference between a team like Detroit and New England for me is in a big game. I feel like Detroit has a lot more talent in certain areas. For sure, no doubt. Weaponry, not even close. But for me, sometimes there's just quarterbacks that can make plays that it's like, I don't care what defense you're playing. Drake May is one of those quarterbacks, and we saw that against the Bucs. He can make throws under duress that Jared Goff can't make. Jared Goff can't do the things Drake May can do. And so in a big moment in a big game, Drake May could take off on 3rd and 7 and get the first down. Jared Goff's not going to do that. Drake May can stand in the face of pressure and deliver a 50-yard bomb. Jared Goff can't do that. So sure, the Patriots maybe are more flawed in certain areas. I think the defenses, I think New England's defense is better than Detroit's. It's close, but there's just that Drake May intangible that I think in a big game when you have to beat Mahomes or you have to beat Josh Allen, or in the case of the Lions, they might have to beat Stafford. To me, that's just the difference between the two. I also think that the coaching staffs, Josh McDaniels is a big difference. Josh McDaniels he can outcoach any defensive coach in the league at any time. That's a big deal. And Mike Vrabel and Dan Campbell, they're similar, right? Like, both guys are going to get their team to run through a wall. Patriots have unbelievable belief in themselves. And the thing is, they're only getting better. They're only getting better. Travion Henderson, Kyle Williams, only getting better. Defense, only getting better. So the Patriots, I have them as an elite team at number 4. At number 3, Seattle. Seattle right now has an elite defense and elite offense, and it's hard to argue against it. The only thing I can say about Seattle, the Patriots have beat Buffalo and they beat Tampa Bay on the road. Who has Seattle beat? That's the only thing I can say about Seattle. Who have they beaten? Jacksonville, Pittsburgh? They lost to the Niners. They lost to the Bucks. The only competent teams they've played. We're going to see how they play against the Rams. And the Rams are probably the best team in football. So we'll see how that goes. It is a divisional foe. They'll have a good chance. But, like, that's the question for me. They beat the crap out of the Cardinals. Right? They beat the crap out of the Commanders. How will they look against a good team? Because so far, they haven't fared well against good teams. Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, not good teams. Mid. Right? So, Seattle, love their defense. Love Mike McDonald. Always have. Offensively, Sam Darnold looking great. Shaheed will only get more involved. JSN's uncoverable. The O-line's been better than I think or thought. The run game has its moments. It needs to be a little bit more consistent. But there's very few flaws from an analytical perspective. There's very few flaws from an eye test perspective. The only thing I can say is the results. The results being when you play a good team that you have to beat in the playoffs, you haven't beat any of them yet. The two NFC playoff teams that you would have to play, that you have played, you've lost to. So let's see you against the good teams. That's the only thing I can say. At number 2, Philadelphia. Philly, it was ugly. It was brutal. It was tough to watch. But Philly looked like the team last year in some ways. The defense. Jalen Phillips added a lot to this defense against the Packers. I think that's been an underrated storyline not a lot of people are talking about. Jalen Phillips was fantastic. He fits right in with Vic Fangio in that defense. He clearly knew the system. He was in there right away. Him, Jalen Carter, Ajomo, Hunt, Smith, that could be the defense from last year. Right? Pretty damn close. They might not have a Milton Williams, but it's close. Phillips is basically Josh Sweat. It's getting close. If Adoree Jackson can play a hint better, this could be the best defense in the league again. And that's a dangerous thing when you probably will be hosting multiple playoff games at the Link in Philly. The thing is, can the offense find a formula? Because last year they had the historic run game that allowed them to glide to the Super Bowl. This year the run game is not good. And so they're testing. Like, no matter how good a defense is, eventually the dam's going to break. If you can't score points, you're not going to win in the playoffs. So the Eagles, I just wonder if it was a matchup against the Packers, why they struggled so much on offense. I'm willing to give them a pass against a very good defense in Green Bay because their defense looked that impressive to me. But they need to get something going on offense that really makes defenses fear them again. Is it A.J. Brown, right? What is it? We need some fear out there if we're Philly. And then number 1, the Rams. Dominant performance over the Niners. Offensively, they did whatever they wanted. Vertical passing, 3 tight end sets, 11 personnel, run game, pass game, screen game, all of it. Stafford is on fire. He's fuego. And Devontae Adams looks good. Puka looks good. Kyron looks way better this year. Like, they're getting a lot of other guys involved. The O-line's solid. Not great. The defense, though, I think is the most overrated good defense in the league. I would not put the Rams in the category of the Eagles, the Texans, the Broncos, the Seahawks. I would not. I think they're a step below that. I think they're more of a Patriot, Detroit caliber defense. Kansas City. I don't think they're elite. But that's okay because they're capable of scoring 40. And the Niners are clearly depleted on defense. But again, for the Rams, though, let's see how you fare against Seattle because that's not a defense that's depleted. So big test coming up. There it is, guys, my power rankings for week number 11 Hope you enjoyed. If you did, Gronk spike the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. It's Mitch. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.